Good afternoon, folks. I'm Dave Thompson. I am the director here at the Academy of Cleaning Excellence. It is the afternoon of Monday, our first show on a Monday afternoon. And if you're listening to the show live, you're missing some of the eclipse that I think is going on right about now. I've been getting some reports. It's been going on a little bit this afternoon. So if you're live with us, we really appreciate that. There's three words in which I focus on each and every normally Friday afternoon, but we're going to do it on a Monday today. Healthy, positive, and proactive. Some things don't change. Today, my guest speaker is returning to us today. He's going to be talking to us about, well, how to select the right floor finish for a job. But there's a little catch. When a budget is the guide. I've never heard of that before because I've never heard of anybody with a budget when it comes to floor finish. Ha ha, on a Monday, right? So, please welcome back to the show, John Norwat. John, are you there with us?
I am. How are you doing?
That's a good thing. As if any of you were watching and looking for the show on Friday, you know we had some technical difficulties. So, John, thank you for rescheduling your time and being with us on a Monday afternoon.
You're very welcome. Glad I could accommodate.
Well, I am too. So, you know, some of our viewers may not have caught you on our first show that we had with you. So, tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and why you're a professional and they want to listen to you about floor finish.
Well, I've been in this industry. I cut my teeth in this industry back in 2000. I've worked for manufacturer rep agencies where we represented multiple key manufacturers in our industry that range from chemical companies to equipment companies to now, you know, and then I've worked for distribution as well, and currently work for the Betco Corporation.
Okay, so you're going to be talking to us today about floor finishes and how they qualify, you know, whenever we're talking about budgets. And there's a lot of different things. And I think you had an analogy, and I know that whenever I was looking at this, I couldn't believe the analogy that you have for here. So I'm going to try not to, what should I say? Not to screw it up here, but man, it's an analogy I never would have thought when I thought floor finish.
Well, yeah. So, and I don't know if we're going to get the image of the analogy here put up for everyone to see, but one of my favorite foods is cake, right? And so when I got thinking about, you know, floor care in general, the first thing, of course, that comes to mind is cake, right? Who wouldn't? Right.
Yeah, right. Who wouldn't think about that? I've been doing this for a lot of times, and this would not have been my first analogy.
I'll bring it all together here for you.
Okay,
so
all right.
one of my favorite cakes is from Costco, and if anyone's familiar with Costco, they're a huge consumer wholesaler, and believe it or not, they have a very, very good bakery. And the amazing thing about their cake is it is the same high quality standard that is repeated time and time again. And it doesn't matter when you buy it, it's always the same. I'd even go so far as to say it doesn't matter where you buy it, any location, it's always the same. And so what that tells you is they've dialed in a system that includes ingredients, it includes the quality trained people, equipment in a controlled environment. And so it starts with quality ingredients and ends with how they bake the cake, no pun intended.
Okay, so now this is where, you know, you caught me on the second one. My first one was cake and floor finish. And then the second one was, I didn't think about Costco and cake. I mean, you know, you got me on both of these. And I'm like, but now I understand because you are right. And I look at several different of the national organizations. I think several people would agree with those same things with that. That's why we go back to them.
Right, exactly. So when you equate that to floor care, you know, you need to pick the right floor finish, number one, and you hope that those have quality ingredients. But that's just one element. You need to make sure, obviously, that you have a trained staff, that you evaluate that you have the floor finish in the right controlled environment, that you have the right equipment, that the process is there so that you can essentially wash, rinse, and repeat. You want to establish the end result standards and then be able to duplicate those standards time and time again when you know you have all the pieces in place.
Now, I mean, I know that we're talking about this, and we all love analogies, but
right.
I don't know if you were watching this, but there was a program on TV last week that was talking about cars and how they started in Henry Ford and the assembly line, and they were talking about exactly the same things. And this was in the early 1900s. Here we are,
Right.
at the start of the 21st century, and we're still talking about the same things. We've fine-tuned it, but it's still those ingredients, the staff, the equipment. It's not just one piece or one part. It's the whole thing that makes up, in his case, the Model T Ford.
Exactly. And that's
So now we're baking. So now we've been baking cake. We've been building cars. Let's build some floor finish, man. That's what we're here to talk about.
Right. Right. So going back to the original topic here, we want to make sure we pick the right finish, right? And so we need to understand, well, okay, we've got a budget, we have some constraints, but there are so many different floor finishes out there, and it's hard to know how they're different. But the unfortunate reality is that for so long, and I'll share in the blame here, is that manufacturers have oftentimes marketed floor finish by solid content.
Oh yeah.
And I'm not sure, even when I started in this industry, when people started to refer to floor care, and I'm learning about floor finish, et cetera, and people referred to solids, and I didn't even ask the question then, well, what the heck is a solid? So
Absolutely.
I kind of want to start there, okay? So when we talk about floor finish, when you get a pail or a gallon of floor finish, inside that container, theoretically, it's 100% solids, because it includes two sets of different types of solids. The volatile ones that evaporate, and then the non-volatile ones that remain on the floor and give you the character of that finish that you're looking for.
Right. And so what a lot of people don't recognize is, that's what makes it a bucket of floor finish, or a gallon, or whatever it is, is the liquid and what is going to be left on the floor. That's the total amount of solids that we're purchasing.
Right. And it's like they say that the sum of all parts is greater than the whole. I guess you could kind of use that saying in this particular instance. But when we market solid contents, or when I guess certain folks refer to solid contents, and they might refer to them in percentages like 20 or 25 or even higher, they're referring to the amount of solids that are left on the floor. Okay. And so when you look at the ingredients from raw material, it includes a lot of water, it includes leveling agents, it includes evaporating agents, and everything that kind of help everything blend together into one dispersed solution, so that they're not all separating, if you will, from a chemical standpoint. Well,
and the thing is people don't realize there's defoamers in there, and there's other agents in there that keep this in a liquid form while it's in the bucket, so that it doesn't go solid and actually be a lump of acrylic floor finish.
Well, and so that you can work with it when it does come time to actually apply it onto the floor. Right.
And that's where you'll find some of these people will talk about they like one finish better than another, because when they poured it out, they had a little bit longer to work with it before it started to set up. And that's what we're talking about, right?
In some cases, yes. So when you look at the variety, or the ratio and the proportions of those ingredients, you get sort of what you just referred to, is you get various behaviors. Okay.
Correct.
So what ends up on the floor? Well, it's really the bulk of three key ingredients, and a lot of it's polymer, which is plastic beads, which is similar to, and I have an illustration that kind of shows that, but eventually what ends, it's a lot of polymer, it's plasticizers, and synthetic wax. And I want to kind of highlight and underscore that, because while we might reuse the term wax, I kind of use it in quotation marks, because when floor finish was originally developed, it actually did and primarily consisted of carnauba wax. A lot of what you use like on a car today to shine your car up.
Yeah, a natural product. A completely natural, biodegradable product.
Right, which, I'm sure looks great, but it doesn't blend real well in a chemical solution. It just kind of separates. It's like oil and water. So our synthetic waxes, though, are developed for a couple different ways. This is a very high level explanation, but we want to create soft waxes or synthetic waxes with soft properties, and synthetic waxes with harder properties, and use that to kind of define and specify the character that we're trying to create on the floor and how it needs to be maintained. It also needs to be able to it needs to be able to blend in solution, which what natural wax can't do.
Which is what you're talking about is the synthetic wax, although it would be a very, very minute part, blends with the acrylic polymers and copolymers that really make up the finish that we have on the floor.
Yes, yes, it's one component, but makes up a very small component of the end result. But when you look at it again, that hard wax, soft wax does ultimately end up determining in a great part the level of durability or hardness or softness of the finish itself. So but I did want to address a key misconception or common myth that folks, because when you know, finishes are oftentimes referred to in amounts or percentages of solids, solid in and of itself as a term can, I guess, lead people to believe that means durability. And so if I were to ask a true and false question and ask you or say to you, the higher the solids in a floor finish, the higher the durability, a lot of people would answer true.
Yes, and they would do that because they're thinking they're getting more product on the floor, exactly. So therefore it's more durable. Right. And I know the answer. That's not necessarily the case.
It doesn't. It also means that the higher the solids means higher the maintenance. That is also not necessarily true.
Correct.
And again, it goes back to the proportion and the ratio of those key non-volatile solids that end up on the floor. So there are finishes out there that characteristically have a low solid content, but are extremely durable and would be considered low maintenance finishes. And conversely, you could have a high solid finish, but maybe have primarily softer synthetic waxes in it and designed to be for frequent maintenance programs and have higher solid contents than those that are considered more durable.
So John, correct me if I'm getting out of line here, but or if I'm getting ahead of you. Mm-hmm. But I'm always saying, you know what, it really, whenever I'm buying a floor finish, when I'm selecting a floor finish for a floor, I'm not as concerned about the amount of solid content as I am the quality of the content that is put on the floor.
There's actually several, or I should say a few different key pieces of criteria that I would want to consider, because let's face it, there's an end result that we want to achieve as well.
Right? Absolutely.
And so we cannot be remiss in just going with, say the cheapest floor finish and, accepting the end result and thinking that we're doing ourselves a favor when it comes to our budget. Okay. So this is where I kind of show a Venn diagram. And if folks aren't familiar with the term Venn diagram, it's where you take, say, 2 or 3 circles and then you identify where they overlap, and where they all 3 overlap is where you really want to try and be. That's the sweet spot. And so with this Venn diagram that I've kind of put together, it consists of 3 different criteria. Number 1, and probably one of the most important pieces of information any facility manager can evaluate, is what's the cleanable square feet? What is the amount of square feet that we're going to consider coating? And
if the audience hasn't done this before, whatever John's talking about here this isn't the total amount of the building. This is the amount of the building that in floor care that you actually have access to, minus the gondolas, minus the desk, minus all of the equipment that's there, which is totally different. And you've got to make sure that you've got the right, or all of this goes haywire.
Well, yeah, and you also have to understand your cleanable square feet, not just know it from a quantifiable figure, because you might have terrazzo, you might have concrete, you might have VCT. And then if we were to talk about cleanable square feet in general terms, you also need to identify, well, how much carpet and tile and grout do I have, et cetera.
Well, not only that, but also traffic patterns and usage patterns and,
exactly.
And the type of dirts that are coming in. There's a lot of different things we're talking about floor care.
Right. So it's not just knowing the cleanable square feet, but underscoring the notion that you need to understand it. Okay. So that's circle number 1. Circle number 2 is, what's the level of expectation we're trying to hit? It's pretty darn difficult to hit a moving target. So you got to have, the bullseye in place and know exactly what it is that, whether it be upper management or, the folks who are using the facility, whether it be patients or residents or students, what have you. So
if it's those elementary kids out there and they're bringing in tons of pea gravel in their shoes, it's going to be totally different as far as my expectation level than if I'm in a retirement center and everybody's wearing slippers. But now I guess retirement centers have got the little scooty things that, tear up the floors too. So,
well, but still, those are two different environments. And then the third piece of criteria, and a very important one, is, well, we need to identify all the available resources that we have so that we don't, put ourselves in a bad spot where we put down a great looking floor, coating, right, and now we find ourselves, now how are we going to maintain this properly? So you need to understand.
Instead of 3 people, we only have 1 person now.
Right. And so obviously they're going to wear multiple hats and have other responsibilities and tasks to accomplish. They can't devote 100% of their time to floor care. So understanding how much labor do we have to apply at this position or at this task, and then also what kind of equipment do we have in order to maintain it properly. So all 3 of these, in my opinion, come into play when making this decision. And
if I can, John, I totally agree, because this is where, I see people that start with an expectation. Mm-hmm. They know what they're dealing with, but all of a sudden they've changed the equipment because they got some new equipment. It changes the whole scenarios now.
Well, what if they added onto the school, or just using a school, for instance, now you have more square feet?
So that sweet spot moves as we change our programs.
It very well may. You may have someone who retires, and the decision was made to not replace that person. Now you have 1 less person, and so there's all kinds of different scenarios that come into play. But as long as you're always keeping the finger on the pulse of all that information, you can make better business decisions.
John, you just said a very key thing there, and you have to keep your finger on it. It is a moving target. Back to what you said a minute ago. It does move because these things change. There's not a constant. It's not that, well, this is what I did 3 years ago, because those things have changed in those 3 years, and you may not have recognized that.
And there's one more thing I might suggest here that's not included in that Venn diagram, but let's also understand why we have the job that we have to do, and that is to protect our facility. And so when we view floor finish, we can't look at it as an expense. It has to be viewed as an investment, because you are seeking to get a return on that investment. You don't seek to get returns necessarily on expenses. I'm not asking the water department what they plan on doing for me this year, aside from keeping my water turned on because I paid my water bill. I want returns on my 401k. I want returns on the investments I put in my home. Things like that, and floor finish should fall in that category.
So the thing about it is we started this session this afternoon with saying that there's a budget. So I've got a budget to work with. I don't want to spend any more money than I have to for this sweet spot.
Right. Okay. So once we've determined all those 3 pieces of a criteria, and let's say let's throw solid content out of the equation here.
Gone.
How are finishes categorized, or what is the purpose behind why they're developed in the first place? And they're usually built or designed based on how much maintenance can be provided. So you're going to have low maintenance finishes, medium maintenance finishes, and then what we would call frequent maintenance finishes. Okay. And so once you've determined how much finish or how much maintenance you can put onto floor care, and then marry up those other criteria that we discussed earlier in that Venn diagram, then you can start to dial in which finish is going to work best for you. But also keeping in mind, like you just said, Dave, I have a budget. Okay. So now we need to consider how much square feet do we have, and then how much are we going to have to spend in the way of raw material. Let's not think about what the cost of labor is quite yet. So keeping all that in mind, we're going to first also consider things like, do we have the right matting in place? And understanding that if we can help ourselves in the way of not having to maintain the floor as much, if we can put some barriers in place to help us keep a clean building clean, because it's a heck of a lot easier to clean a clean building than a dirty one.
John, you've hit a my sweet spot. I mean, I have preached this ever since I've been in this business, that matting, forget everything else. If I've got a budget, don't worry about the floor finish. Worry about the matting. That's where my budget needs to go to. Because I don't care what floor finish I put in. If I don't have the right matting, none of that floor finish, I don't care what it is going to hold up.
Right, exactly. And you want a system. You don't want to throw down a bunch of 3x5 olefin walk-off mats. It's having, something that's going to actually gradually remove the moisture and the debris and soil as you walk into the facility.
I love the diagram you provided here for the audience, because it's 1, 2, 3. It's the steps and the length of the mat and what we can do. I know here at the Academy, when we talk about floor care, we've got a class going on tomorrow, and I can guarantee you we're going to start talking about matting long before we ever start talking about floor finish.
Right. Well, it's your 24/7 custodian at the door, is the way I put it. Right.
And the mats help the carpet as well as the floor finish too.
Absolutely. So, hey, we're not just talking about hard floor care in this respect.
Right. So we got to go beyond the mats.
Right. So once you go beyond the mats, it's, well, how else are we maintaining the facility overall? It's making sure we're using, quality microfiber dust mops. I don't particularly endorse the cotton dust mops with dust mop treatment per se, but ensuring that you have something that's actually going to capture the soil, because let's define clean for a moment, and that's to target the soil, capture the soil, and get the soil out of the building. Right. Microfiber helps you do that. High quality vacuums, and you may be wondering, well, why are you talking about dust and fine particulate and things like that? Well, under a microscope, all that stuff creates a source of abrasion, and as you walk on it, it does take away from the clarity and the quality of your floor. So the more dirt you remove from the facility, the easier your job is going to be in protecting your floors. Okay,
so I'm going to add a little tidbit in here, folks, and this is what I teach in the class. And John, you've heard me say it many times before. When you're talking about dirt and grit, 1 grain of sand has up to 57 cutting edges, and that's only 1 grain. I'm in Florida now. We have the land of sand here. So, we cut everything with our sand here. Doesn't matter where in the country you are, grit has got sand in it, and this is what it's doing. So vacuuming that off at any time you can with a HEPA filtered vacuum is the best practice that we can do.
Right. And then, of course, with large amounts of square feet, it's always smart to have some form of an auto scrubber on hand that you can use on a routine basis. And, when you look at those 3 pieces of criteria, that's really going to help you in the long term and getting the biggest bang out of your buck when it comes to the floor finish that you do decide to put down on the floor. So when we're looking at what finish to put down on the floor, let's just use an example. Okay, and so let's for the sake of easy numbers to work with, we have a 50,000 square foot facility. Okay, right. and then we've understood that this is 50,000 square feet of a hard surface that we're going to coat with a finish. And let's say we're going to settle on a 25% solid. Okay, if we've identified a solid content as one of the pieces of criteria, and I should just state real brief right here that in knowing the solid content, it can help in terms of understanding how many coats of finish to put down on the floor. And typically with, say, a 20 to 25% solid finish, your goal is to get to 100%. So if you were to take that, you would be anywhere between 4 to 6 coats, let's say, just generally speaking. But oftentimes the instructions will state that on the product. If it doesn't give you a specific solid content, it will advise you how many coats of finish to put on the floor. Okay, so going back to our example, let's say that 25% solid finish gives you a coverage rate, and I'm going to asterisk that, okay, a coverage rate of 1,500 square feet per gallon. And let's say you bought a 5-gallon pail at $95 a pail. Your total spend based on the coverage rate and that cost is 200 pails of finish, okay, at $3,800, which is roughly 8 cents a square foot. You with me?
I'm there. I'm trying to.
Okay.
I guess I wish I could have just put on the screen. I could be writing this all for you while we're doing this, but folks, kind of keep that in your mind. We'll go back through it.
Yeah.
So 8 cents a square foot on 50,000 square feet is my cost of this floor finish that you've
of this
outlined.
particular floor finish, and this is just the material itself. Okay.
Now this is a winning bid. So this is a bid. This is
let's just say it's a bid, yeah. And so okay, great. This is the lowest cost. That's one example. All right.
You're going somewhere. I'll keep up with you.
Let's look at option 2. All right. Again, this is the first finish I should state too, is that, let's say it's a low maintenance finish. Option 2 is another low maintenance finish, but rather than using conventional technology, it's a premium ultra high solid finish. Okay. The specs say to apply 2 to 3 coats. So we're talking about a technology that's letting us put down 1 coat of finish that's equal to 2 coats of conventional finish. All right. You're thinking, man, that sounds expensive. Well, yeah. But let's say it gives you a coverage rate of twice as much. So the first example, I said it was 1,500 square feet per gallon. Right. Let's say this one realistically can give you 3,000 square feet per gallon. Okay. And this isn't pie in the sky, you know.
Oh, no.
This is real
I know several
stuff.
I can do that with.
All right. So, but the price per pail, are you ready? $200 a pail. You're thinking,
wait a minute. We went from 95 to 200.
There's no way on earth I would buy a $200 pail of floor finish. You got to be kidding me, right? Well, again, let's consider that you're only putting down 2 to 3 coats at twice the coverage rate. That's 50 pails of product. 50 times 200. Do some quick math. Your total spend is $2,000 for a whopping square foot rate of 4 cents.
You cut it in half.
I cut it in half, and that's not even speaking of the labor.
And the thing is this goes back to what I said earlier. I'm using a better quality product.
Right.
So I'm getting more
quality ingredients. What did I say in the beginning? It starts with quality ingredients. Right. And if you've identified the other key components within that Venn diagram we stated earlier, we know what our square feet is. We know what available resources we have. We know what level of expectation we desire. Now it ends with how you bake the cake. And that's when you get the end result. And then you can duplicate that over and over and over again.
Well, if I'm a contractor, you just help me make a whole lot of money.
We're in the business of helping other people succeed, whether you're a building service contractor or a healthcare institution or a school or a college, what have you.
Well, and this goes back to, what I've always said whenever I have a floor care class here at the Academy is, don't worry about the price of things, worry about the quality of it and how much you get from it. Worry about the performance.
Right. What's the cost of ownership at the end of the day? 8 cents a square foot doesn't sound too bad, but is it, 4 cents?
4 cents. Yeah, I was just about ready to say 4 cents sounds a whole lot better. I don't know anybody on the the other end of the audience here that's going to disagree with us on that.
Right.
So this is not even covering the labor costs. The labor is always much more than the product cost. But if you cut product costs in half and have a better quality product, but it goes back to the mats and the auto scrubbers and the vacuuming of the mats and keeping that. This is all a program back to your cake.
Right. Well, and look at the difference in the example I just gave, and this is just one example. But let's say it's a realistic number of a difference in savings of $1,800. Well, what does that buy?
Oh gosh. Well, heck, I can buy a whole lot of mats for it.
You can buy matting. You could buy a high-speed burnisher. You could put a chunk into an auto scrubber. There's a lot of different ways you could use that money.
Well, I don't know about you folks, but if you don't have some pause here, some reason to maybe check and see what you've been doing, I think that we kind of touched on a number of different subjects. Any final words here before we close out our show today, John Woods? Any final words, John?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Cut out for a moment. No, I hope that if anything, that today's conversation, it really, I hope what it does is asks you to question assumptions, question the status quo, which I know is kind of the premise of your show, Dave.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree. This is about being progressive. And one of the things that we always talk about is change is the only thing that's constant. And floor finishes, I made a career out of floor care. And I can tell you that it changes all the time. We've got a new program we're going to be talking about here, going to the ISSA show in a few weeks. And, one of them was on a knowledge board. And we asked a few questions. And some people are going to go, huh, what? Things have changed.
Right.
Well, right. I guess, John, we're going to have you back on the show some other time. I think this is your second time. We may get you on a third time before the end of the year.
Hey, let's do it.
All right. So, folks, if you've been with us today, you can go to the academyofcleaning.com. That is our website. You can find our 5 campuses. Just this last week, we actually streamed our first virtual hands-on class to Atlanta, Georgia. So we've got one under our belt. We're moving on. You can find our live classes, our online. You can find information about our upcoming master cruise to the Bahamas. This is a cruise ship. We're going to do our 1-week master class on the cruise ship. You think about progressive, hey, that I guess is about as progressive as you can get. Folks, we also have our Academy Facebook page. Like and share our page if you're a booker. If you're not, and you're one of those entrepreneurs that's looking to keep up with what we're doing, we have an Academy LinkedIn page as well. For those that are being in the cleaning industry that's listening to me today, we are going to be at ISSA convention here in just a few weeks, starting September the 11th through the 14th. The Academy of Cleaning Excellence will be there at booth number 408. We've got a new interactive little program that we want you to come by and see. We're going to be talking about our trip to the Bahamas and some other things as well. Now, next Friday, my guest, well, I should not say next Friday, it's actually this Friday. Sorry about that. Mike Ward, he's going to be on with me. He's out of Colorado, and he's been in the custodial industry for about 35 years in the educational market. He's written 2 books on the subject of the professional custodian. He wants to shed a little bit of difference on the job that we do and just being professional about it. I think it's going to be a great conversation. I don't think you want to miss out on it. I know he's got a few cartoons in it, add a little bit of laughter to it as well. So, folks, until next Friday afternoon, this week, 1 p.m. right here live from Orlando, I'm Dave Thompson. Keep changing your future. Keep those changes healthy, positive, and proactive. Remember my mantra, I am a janitor, and I save lives. Thanks for watching.